So if you haven't heard, there was a major compromise of a really popular system software called CPUID, which has been around for a while. And recently, the website of that software, and it's also sister software, I guess you could call it, Hardware Monitor, was compromised. And if you downloaded CPUID or Hardware Monitor from the official website, anytime around April 9th to the 10th, there was a 16-hour period where you downloaded malware. And you would probably know it if you did in one of the cases. It was both the installer link and the portable zip version, both linked out to malware versions. Now, to be clear, this wasn't the actual people who write the software putting in a malicious version and turning evil or anything. It was that they were hacked and the website got compromised. The statement said with a side API where hackers were able to somehow link to a fake version on a different server that was malware. Now, apparently, if you had downloaded the installer version of it, it would have downloaded one file called hardware info monitor setup.exe, which hardware info is a totally different software. And also the installer would have popped up in Russian, so you would probably know if you downloaded this. Of course, if you ran it and saw the Russian, it was already too late. It's not like if you closed it, you would have been safe. And then also apparently the other portable versions was a zip file like normal, but this time how it worked was pretty interesting. It actually used something called DLL hijacking, where the actual EXE, the CPUID EXE was legitimate and even signed. And if you looked at the signature, it was legit. It was the real one. However, it came with a cryptbase.dll, which was fake. And this is something I actually talked about where Windows by default will look for a DLL that the EXE calls for next to the EXE first. So that's what they did. And in this case, the legitimate software uses a function that is located in cryptbase.dll, and the real one is going to be in the Windows system folder. But if you don't hard code that or add other protections, then by default, Windows will have the software look for it next to the software. And if it's there, it'll use that instead of going to the real one in the system directory. So the hackers put the malicious DLL next to the file so that the real software, when it called whatever function it thought it was calling in the real crypto DLL, well, that function in the fake one did something very different. In this case, it would download another viral payload and initiate the malware. This is also called DLL sideloading. Like I said, both the downloads for Hardware Monitor and CPUID were compromised, so the zip file would have been called something depending on which one you were trying to download. And again, for both of these, there is a legitimate 1.63 version of Hardware Monitor and 2.19 of CPUID, but the one that it linked to was fake. And according to some analysis, this is a pretty sophisticated malware. It's a remote access Trojan, which means that it basically allows the hackers to control your computer. And it also is not just a one-time stealer thing. It does steal your credentials from Google Chrome, but it will also install persistent processes, which means if you ran it once, it installed hidden stuff that launches at startup without you knowing, so it's still there. So if you happen to have downloaded CPUID or Hardware Monitor during that period, if you saw the Russian installer, you're compromised. And also, if you look and still have the download with the zip and you can see that there's the cryptbase.dll in there, you're also compromised. And really, you should just nuke Windows, reformat the drive, back up what you can while offline, disconnect the internet, copy to an external drive. Not while booted into Windows, you want to kind of disconnect the drive, connect it to something it's not going to boot up, and only copy over any essential stuff in your documents, and then reformat that drive and then reinstall Windows. Probably better to hire a professional who knows what they're doing with this. They could help you with that if you're not an expert. Though if you're someone who downloads CPUID, you probably are a power user, so you should be okay to at least handle it yourself, but again, you gotta do something. And this kind of attack, DLL hijacking especially, is pretty scary because if you're like me, I usually do check signatures of software that I download, and this is something where if you were not careful and you didn't also check the signature on the DLL, usually DLLs are signed, but not even always, then you wouldn't have realized. Maybe if you had run it through VirusTotal, or apparently Windows Defender or another antivirus could have potentially caught it, but otherwise you kind of would have been screwed. Because again, the way this worked was it was the legitimate EXE, the real one, but because they didn't have protections in place that properly checked or called the DLL, then they were able to hijack it with a fake one. It almost seems like these days you kind of have to balance between staying on the latest up-to-date version and also maybe using a couple versions older so that you don't get compromised from supply chain attacks. It's actually insane these days how that works. And in this case, the advice only download from the official website wouldn't have even helped. I guess really the best thing is to have real-time protection on in Windows Defender or any software you're using, or use a good antivirus in general that has real-time protection that doesn't just operate off of signatures, which most do these days, but just kind of hope it works. Anyway, this was more of just a heads up. Hopefully none of you got compromised, but if you didn't know this happened, then be aware of that. If you want to keep watching, next up, here's my video talking about DLL hijacking and sideloading. You'll definitely want to see that. I'll put that link right there. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help out in the age of AI slop. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.